In last week's episode, we talked about Magic the Gathering and jazz as systems which enable improvisation. Let's see what you had to say. Patrick Daly writes a really insightful comment, and it's no surprise. It seems like Patrick is someone who has some experience with both jazz and Magic the Gathering. That sort of, I think, sets the tone for a lot of what I ended up seeing in the comments and all of the conversation around this video, which was great, by the way. We have an overabundance of comments chosen for this comment response video, so I want to apologize to both our editors and possibly you guys for maybe uploading like a 25-minute comment video. It was very hard for me to choose a small number. But Patrick basically points out some discrepancies maybe in the way that we think about both Magic and jazz. And I think, without putting it too explicitly, outlines how both of those things are sometimes a lot more complicated than you give them credit, and that, jazz and the way improvisation works in jazz and the fact that, improvisation exists in jazz isn't as clear as, people just make it up as they go along. And that for Magic the Gathering, it's not just as simple as, there is a central authority that creates a set of cards and a set of rules that people then play with in the same way over and over and over again. Patrick's final point is one that I think is really interesting, and one that repays consideration, and it's that while jazz does not have an owner per se, Magic the Gathering does. And I think that this, in Wizards of the Coast, the people who print the cards and publish them and stuff, and I think maybe, the way around this idea is some of the stuff that we'll talk about soon enough. While Wizards of the Coast does own Magic the Gathering, they don't own collectible card games as a system. And so we've seen a lot of people try to innovate on that and try to see where they can drive that system into other areas. And maybe that's a comparison to genres or, other stuff. But yeah, this was a great comment, and I think a great way to get started. And Dynamics actually makes the related point that it might be the card game industry that is like jazz and not Magic the Gathering itself. Magic just being the early example, the genre-defining example that people then iterate on or improve upon, change in order to innovate. Rekhyt on the subreddit makes the point that particular play styles of Magic are jazz-like. The specific example that they give is Commander, and that other types of playstyles within Magic are other kinds of music, which I don't know enough about the particular playstyles of Magic to show where these line up, but I love this kind of exercise. The JCD wrote a great comment, and a comment that I was hoping someone would make. I pinned this one, and a great discussion followed, and I highly recommend going and checking it out and see what people think. But the JCD talked about how a lot of Magic is about optimization and putting together a deck that does a specific set of things in the most optimal way, and how playing jazz is actually more about doing what feels good and expressing oneself. And I would say that as someone who played a fair amount of jazz semi-professionally, in another life, I think that there is actually also a fair amount of optimization when playing music, especially when improvising with other people, and when trying to figure out how to make a coherent statement, how to progress through a piece of music in a way that is improvisatory, and that I think that really what this outlines for me is that these things really change and shift depending upon what you think of as the defining example of the larger system, and that I think if you think of jazz as the thing that is about just playing whatever and doing what feels good, maybe that's like free jazz, sort of, and that in comparison to playing Commander, that makes no sense. Or in comparison to playing Standard, that doesn't feel like that jives. But that there are maybe deeper level characteristics of both that you can find no matter what play style of either you're looking at. Anyway, yeah, this is clearly huge part of the conversation. Highly recommend going and checking out the thread that was inspired by this comment. Malou, though you do not make the direct comparison between this description of Magic and the playing of jazz, as someone who, as I said in the last comment, played jazz for a little while, this does hit a little close to home. good luck to all you jazz musicians out there. I had a hard go at it. Ben, I know I told some people on the internet that I would put together a deck list for this deck that we keep on the set that's from, I believe, 1994. I haven't done it yet, but here, I'm just gonna go through it. We'll read a couple cards that I find so that you get a sense of what's in here. Urza's Power Plant. I got an Icy Manipulator, which looks a little bit, I mean, the art on that is upsetting. Eladamri's Vineyard. At the beginning of each player's main phase, add 2 forests to that player's mana pool. Just let me know when you get bored, because I'll keep going. Absolute Law. This is definitely another one that I thought just looked really dope. I'm sure that I had to know all creatures gain protection from red. Oh, okay, actually that's kind of cool. Bunch of mountains. Fireball, of course. I mean, of course, you're gonna have Fireball. Oh, Terror. Yeah, I remember really liking this one. It's scary. Dark Ritual is definitely some card art that I would have aspired to look like when I, finally reached middle age. So maybe there's a goatee in my future. All right. Well, I'll make a final. I'll try to remember to make a deck list. Someone's gonna have to tell me how to do that. I'll just call Patrick. He'll tell me how to do it. Matthew Henke makes a really great point about the sort of commercialism side of the argument, the culture industry way of looking at both jazz and Magic the Gathering, which is that Magic is maybe a lot like golf or lacrosse, in that in order to play the game appropriately at a contemporary level or with other contemporary players, there is an amount of investment that is basically required. You can't play the game if you're not continually investing in new materials and modern aspects of the game, modern parts. And I think that there was some discussion about this on the subreddit too, about whether or not you could make this argument for jazz. In order to stay up on jazz, do you have to keep buying new instruments? Not really, but do you have to keep buying new pieces of music to play? Do you have to keep sort of sacrificing something in order to play to a world-class level? And there was some discussion about the commercial aspects of charts, but I think that this argument definitely rings true for Magic if it doesn't for jazz. Punk Patriot makes the point that Magic and jazz are really not alike in the end because of the strictness of the rules, and that while there might be rules sort of in jazz, you are encouraged to break them in a way that is not the case in Magic, that there is really a much more strict way of appreciating improvisation in Magic than there is in comparison with jazz, especially if you're looking at jazz sort of writ more largely than any specific, maybe particularly free improvisatory framework. And I think that this is, in the end, this is a great point, and one where the argument, where the comparison between the two systems starts to fail, is that, in Magic, there are rules so that there can be a winner. And in jazz, there are rules so that one is able to break them and, create a piece of expressive art. And I think that any search for the same type of rules or for a kind of winner would be to extend the analogy to places where it's not really meant to go. So yeah, it's a great sort of drawing off of the bounds. William Levasseur makes a very interesting point, one that never occurred to me, which is that Magic, it might be like jazz, it might be like other things, but that it is also maybe like the law. And I think that you can see this in a lot of games with the existence of the word rules lawyering, but to just see it put out this way, to see the idea presented as literally as this, it was very, intriguing. Piqued my interest. Thank you, William, for this comment. How fitting is it that a culture like America's fundamentally based on law has so much love for a game that's basically two made-up pseudo-lawyers arguing about whether a fireball can still get forked, even if I just played a counterspell on it. I don't even know what that means, and that's great. Johntheblack makes a really good point about the shop culture that arose around Magic the Gathering and having to sort of, you go play Friday Night Magic. If you want to buy a certain card, there is, there's a certain amount of interaction or community that you're going to have to interface with, and asks whether or not that is the same thing as what has happened in the jazz community. Did jazz allow a certain community of people to come together where they would not have otherwise? And Fenixius, in response, points out that you could say that this is maybe not something that is particular to jazz, that, maybe metal has done something really similar. And, I've been thinking about this comment since I read it, and I don't have a satisfying answer, but I will say that I think there is something about the placehood of the game shop and the jazz club that feels similar, in a way that is perhaps different from a metal show or a punk rock show or like an art music show, at least ones that I've been to. Like, it's irresponsible for me to talk about, talk for all of them. But I think there is a kind of intimacy and a sense of people like working through things, like doing work that exists in both the game shop and the jazz club, as long as it's not Blue Note. That feels related, but like I said, I'm still clearly working this through. But I think this is like a part of this idea that I never even considered thinking through, which is, the places that these things happen in. Do they reflect anything about how the two systems might be similar? And this is a great question and a great comparison. OtakuOlga very, very kindly explains the assemble contraptions joke, which Patrick had to explain to me, and it took him some minutes, and I'm very proud that he was able to get it. I'm very proud that he was able to explain it to me. I'm very proud that I was able to understand it. Y'all are nerds. I mean, I am too. Like, don't get me wrong.
I know, right?
But
nerds get to call each other nerds.
Yeah,
There are hierarchies.
Yeah. I also want to point out that I spared everybody really bad jazz jokes, like deep music theory nonsense, that Patrick was like, no one will get that. And I was like, but no one's going to get the Magic the Gathering joke either. But he was right. Everybody did get it. And maybe we should have made some bad jazz jokes. More, okay. I was talking to him about trying to find cards that had the word augmented in it so we can make an augmented chords. You see where I was probably headed. It's good that I didn't go there. And last but not least, Srpad points out the different types of player types for Magic the Gathering. These are sort of like player archetypes or personality types, what they look for in Magic the Gathering. They go by the names Timmy, Tammy, Johnny, Jenny, and Spike. There's also a couple others, Mel and Vorthos, and trying to sort of think through whether or not those map particularly well onto how people play music. And I think that this argument holds water, and is not a way that I thought about thinking through devotees to certain genres in the past. So this was eye-opening in a really interesting way. So thanks for this comment. This was great.